Have you ever noticed how many people who display deep spiritual awareness and unusual understanding of human nature often come from homes we could describe as difficult, challenging, or even toxic? This is not a coincidence. There is a pattern here, a connection rarely discussed in spiritual circles, where we tend to prefer inspiring stories of transcendence instead of examining the often painful roots of awakening. But the truth is that there is a profound, almost alchemical relationship between early suffering within the family and the capacity to awaken to deeper realities. I once met a woman, let's call her Sophia, whose childhood was marked by an alcoholic father and an emotionally absent mother. From a very young age, she had to develop extraordinary sensitivity to navigate the minefield of unpredictable moods and contradictory expectations in her home. She learned to read the subtlest signs of imminent danger, to detect the shift in her father's breathing that signaled an episode of rage, to notice the tension in her mother's shoulders that meant another period of emotional withdrawal. In essence, she developed a level of perception far beyond what would be necessary in a safe and nurturing environment. And it was precisely this sharpened perception, initially developed as a survival mechanism, that later became an extraordinary capacity for spiritual insight, a natural ability to see through the illusions and conditionings that keep most people imprisoned in limited states of consciousness. This is the first key to understanding the hidden reason why so many awakened souls emerge from toxic family environments. These environments demand the development of extraordinary perceptive abilities. When a child cannot trust the official narratives the adults in their life present, when there is constant contradiction between what is said and what is actually done, when love is proclaimed with words but denied in actions, that child is forced to develop a kind of double vision, a capacity to perceive both the surface and what lies beneath it. And this is precisely the same capacity that defines genuine spiritual awareness, the ability to see beyond appearances, to perceive the deeper currents of reality beneath the swirl of surface phenomena. Think for a moment about what happens to a child who grows up in a home where adults say one thing but do another, where perhaps religion is preached on Sundays but completely absent from daily life, where the importance of honesty is emphasized while lies are told routinely, where love is proclaimed as the highest value while abusive behavior is the norm. That child faces a fundamental choice: accept the official narrative and deny their own perception, or trust their direct experience and recognize the falsity of the narrative. Those who choose the second path, often at a great emotional cost, are essentially practicing the same discernment at the heart of all genuine spiritual traditions: the ability to distinguish the real from the illusory, the truth from the appearance, the authentic from the false. And here we find the second crucial factor: the early development of a sense of separation from collective narratives. The child who recognizes the disparity between what is said and what is done in their family is having their first experience of awakening from the collective dream. They are learning in the hardest way possible that the stories humans tell about themselves often do not correspond to lived reality. And this lesson, as painful as it is precisely the beginning of the genuine spiritual journey, which always starts with the recognition that there is more to reality than the official, socially sanctioned versions of truth allow us to see. I once met a man whose mother suffered from severe narcissistic personality disorder. In the presence of others, She presented herself as the perfect, loving, devoted mother. But behind closed doors, she treated her son as nothing more than an extension of herself, a tool whose only purpose was to satisfy her emotional needs. The deepest effect of this experience was not, surprisingly, the psychological damage it undoubtedly caused. It was the early, visceral understanding that the person the world saw and celebrated was not the real person, that there was a fundamental disparity between the social mask and the private reality. Years later, when this man encountered spiritual teachings that spoke about the ego as a fictional construct, about the persona as a mask we wear, but that is not our true being, he did not need intellectual persuasion. He instantly recognized the truth of these teachings because he had lived that reality in its rawest and most undeniable form. There is a third factor at play: the need to seek deeper answers to suffering. When someone grows up in a healthy, loving, nurturing environment, it is much easier to accept the conventional explanations society offers about the meaning and purpose of life. Why question a system that seems to work well for you? Why search for alternative realities when the presented reality feels adequate? But when you experience deep suffering early on, when the very structures that were supposed to protect and nurture you are the ones causing harm, the conventional answers begin to feel profoundly inadequate. Religious platitudes, cultural cliches, materialistic distractions, all of it feels superficial when confronted with the depth of real suffering. And so, a search begins. A search for something that can explain, contain, or give meaning to the pain. A search that often leads beyond the boundaries of culturally accepted truths into deeper territories of human experience. This search, born out of the need to understand and transcend suffering, is what propels many onto the spiritual path. As Buddha said, the first noble truth is the truth of suffering. It is no coincidence that many spiritual traditions begin by recognizing the reality of pain as the fundamental starting point of the awakening journey. Let me ask you directly, do you recognize this pattern in your own life? Did you grow up in an environment that, in some way, forced you to develop a sharper perception of reality? Have you found that experiences others might consider traumatic paradoxically open doors to insights that people with more sheltered childhoods may not access as easily? If any of this resonates with you, I invite you to share your experience in the comments. You can simply write, "I grew up in a challenging home and it awakened me too." Your comment might be exactly what someone else needs to read today to understand that their own wounds are not only sources of pain, but potentially portals to deeper consciousness. Sometimes the greatest gift we can offer one another is simply the confirmation that we are not alone, that what may feel like a unique personal pattern is actually part of a broader process of human spiritual evolution. And believe me, as I read each comment, I am truly hearing you, not just your words, but the unique journey that brought you here. There is another crucial aspect of this connection between toxic homes and awakened souls: the early development of the capacity for disidentification. In chaotic or abusive family environments, many children intuitively discover a profound truth that meditators spend years trying to realize consciously: that it is possible to internally separate from painful experiences. They learn to create an inner observing space, a witnessing awareness that somehow remains unentangled with the emotional storm around and within them. A woman once told me that during episodes of domestic violence in her childhood, she developed the ability to float toward the corner of the ceiling, observing the scene below as if it were a movie happening to someone else. Psychologists would call this dissociation a defense mechanism, but from a spiritual perspective, it is the rudimentary beginning of the very capacity meditative masters cultivate. The ability to disidentify from immediate experience, to recognize that there exists a witnessing consciousness that is not consumed by the phenomena it observes. What begins as a psychological survival mechanism can, with time and proper understanding, transform into a profound spiritual realization. The understanding that you are not your thoughts, not your emotions, not even the experiences you go through. You are the consciousness that witnesses all of it. Of course, there is a crucial difference between traumatic dissociation and conscious presence. The former is a closing, a contraction, an escape mechanism that, while protective, also creates internal fragmentation. The latter is an opening, an expansion, the capacity to remain fully present even with difficult experiences, but the bridge between them may be shorter than we imagine. Many people who developed dissociative mechanisms in childhood discover, upon encountering genuine spiritual practices, that they already possess an experiential understanding of non-identification that others might take years to develop. Their challenge is not learning to disidentify, but learning to reintegrate experience with full presence, transforming dissociation into inclusive awareness. There is also a connection between growing up in emotionally chaotic environments and developing an extraordinary capacity for empathy and human understanding. When you must constantly read the emotional states of others to navigate your world safely, you develop a refined sensitivity to the subterranean currents of human experience. You learn to perceive what is unspoken, to feel the emotion behind the mask, to understand the unexpressed fears and desires that drive behavior. This capacity, originally developed out of necessity, often becomes a profound understanding of the human condition that goes far beyond the conventional. It is no coincidence that many therapists, counselors, spiritual teachers, and deeply intuitive artists come from complex family backgrounds. Their ability to see beyond the surface, to understand the deeper layers of human experience, was forged in the fire of their own difficult experiences. What begins as a hypersensitivity necessary for survival can, with time, transform into a higher form of empathic intelligence that serves not only themselves but many others on their journey of healing and awakening. And here we reach one of the most profound and paradoxical insights about this connection between toxic homes and spiritual awakening. The recognition that suffering, although never desirable in itself, can act as a catalyst for soul growth in ways comfort rarely can. This is not to glorify trauma or suggest that abuse is somehow spiritually beneficial. Abuse is always a violation, never a gift. But there is a possibility of redemption even within the most difficult experiences, a possibility that does not diminish the wrongness of the abuse, but acknowledges the extraordinary human capacity to extract meaning, purpose, and even wisdom from the most unlikely places. I once met a man who grew up with an untreated schizophrenic mother. His childhood was a chaos of alternating realities where what was real and what was delusion often blurred with no clear distinction. One moment his mother was loving and present, the next convinced he was an impostor who had replaced her real son. The constant unpredictability created fertile ground for all kinds of psychological difficulties. But it also planted the seeds for a deeply visceral understanding of the fluid and constructed nature of reality. When he eventually encountered Buddhist teachings on emptiness or Vedantic texts on Maya, he immediately recognized the truth of these perspectives, not as philosophical abstractions, but as precise descriptions of a reality he had directly experienced. What for many is an intellectually difficult concept was for him a lived truth. There is also a connection between the experience of having a false self imposed in dysfunctional family environments and the eventual capacity to recognize and transcend all false identities on the spiritual path. Many children in toxic homes learn to develop adaptive personalities, shaped not by their essential nature, but by the distorted demands of their caregivers. They learn to be who they need to be to survive emotionally, not who they truly are. This is a particular type of suffering, the loss of contact with the authentic self. But paradoxically, this very experience can create an acute sensitivity to the difference between authentic and inauthentic identities, between essential being and adaptive masks. And this sensitivity can become a powerful tool on the spiritual path, where recognizing and transcending false identities is a crucial step. What I am suggesting is not that we should be grateful for abuse or neglect, nor that such experiences are necessary for spiritual awakening. They certainly are not. There are many paths to awakening, and nurturing, loving environments can also provide powerful foundations for spiritual growth. What I am pointing to is an observable pattern that many people who demonstrate unusual levels of spiritual awareness had their perceptive and intuitive capacities initially developed in response to challenging family environments, and that there is a possible alchemy through which the lead of early suffering can be transformed not automatically but through a conscious process into the gold of spiritual wisdom. This alchemy does not happen automatically. Many who grow up in toxic homes do not find the path to this transformation. Instead, they repeat the patterns they experienced, remain trapped in victim identities, or seek escape through addictions or self-destructive behaviors. Toxicity alone does not guarantee awakening. It simply creates conditions that may, with the right catalysts, lead to uncommon insights. So what makes the difference? One critical variable seems to be the presence, however brief or intermittent, of at least one figure who offers a different way of relating. It might be a relative, a teacher, a mentor, a family friend, anyone who demonstrates a different way of being. This figure provides a crucial contrast to the dominant toxic environment, offering a glimpse of alternative possibilities that can plant the seed for a future search. Without this contrast, it may be much harder to imagine that another way of life is possible. Another important variable is the eventual encounter with meaningful structures, whether in the form of spiritual traditions, effective therapies, supportive communities, or transformative practices that can help a person make sense of their experiences and channel them toward growth instead of self-destruction. Pain by itself is rarely transformative. It is the understanding of pain, its framing, within a larger narrative of meaning and purpose, that allows its transmutation into wisdom. There is also the factor of innate resilience, that mysterious quality that allows some people to maintain an intact inner core even in the most adverse circumstances. This resilience is not distributed equally, and its sources are not fully understood. But when present, it seems to act as a protective shield for a person's deepest essence, allowing them to absorb the lessons of difficult environments without being completely shattered by them. So, what is the final message in this exploration of the hidden reason why so many awakened souls emerge from toxic homes? It is not, certainly, that we should celebrate or romanticize childhood suffering, which is always a violation of the sacred trust between generations. Nor is it to suggest that those who had happy childhoods are somehow at a disadvantage on the spiritual path. That would be absurd. It is simply to recognize a paradoxical truth about the human journey, that our deepest wounds often become through a mysterious process of transformation. The cracks through which the light enters, the openings through which we can glimpse realities beyond those most people take for granted. For those who carry the scars of difficult childhoods, may the understanding of this connection offer not a justification for what should never have happened, but a recognition of your innate potential for spiritual perception, forged in the very experiences that caused pain. And may this understanding serve as an invitation to consciously transform what was once an unconscious survival strategy into a deliberate path of awakening and service. For those fortunate enough to have grown up in healthy environments, may this understanding deepen your compassion for those who were not as lucky, and perhaps inspire you to value more deeply the gifts of safety, stability, and love you received, recognizing that these too can be powerful foundations for spiritual growth when approached with gratitude and conscious openness. And for all of us, regardless of our history, may we recognize the fundamental truth illustrated by this exploration, that the universe operates in mysterious ways, often transforming our greatest challenges into our deepest gifts, not automatically, but through the alchemical work of understanding, acceptance, forgiveness, and conscious transcendence. If you found something in these words that resonates with your own experience, if you recognized some part of your journey in this exploration of the connection between challenging family environments and spiritual awakening, then you already know you are not alone on this path of transformation and transcendence. This channel exists for people like you who are seeking to understand the deeper connections between their life experiences and their spiritual development, who are committed not only to healing their past wounds, but to transforming them into sources of wisdom and compassion that can benefit everyone they encounter. Each week, we explore different facets of the spiritual journey, always grounded in lived reality, never escaping into comforting abstractions or toxic positivity that denies the shadows in search of artificial light. Subscribe to this channel to continue this journey of honest exploration, authentic transformation, and genuine community. It was not an accident that you found this reflection today. It was not mere coincidence that these specific words reached you at this specific moment in your journey. There is a deeper intelligence at work in the seemingly random patterns of our collective experience, connecting those who are ready for deeper understanding with the insights and communities that can nourish their continued growth. Allow yourself to receive the support and guidance available to you in this next chapter of your journey. Tap the subscribe button, activate notifications, and join us as we continue exploring the depths of human experience and the heights of spiritual potential that all of us carry, often hidden within the very experiences we once feared would define us forever.